Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your award-winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. If you are listening for the first time, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We're of course on X, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook too. And look, going to be brutal with you, going to be honest with you. Look, this is proper Spurs through and through. The show none of us really wanted to do, but we have to do it. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by, look, to give me a bit of comfort, therapy's on the way. We're joined by three of our best therapists you can find on Last Word on Spurs, three of our regular returning guests that are going to hopefully provide some kind of comfort, balance, analysis, honesty on this Last Word on Spurs. I'm joined by broadcast extraordinaire Russ Williams, actor TJ Ramini, and chatty patty Patrick Tyrant, hours upon returning from the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And look, on this show, as you guys know, we do record, I will emphasize it every time, on match day. The opinions are real, it's honest, it's brutal, and quite honestly, we want to tell it as it is. And for some that have maybe followed Spurs for only a year or two since Andrew's joined the football club, have maybe questioned, why is there at times such maybe potential negativity, such potential lack of optimism? And it's because Spurs for a number of years have really hurt us, and where despite we want to be optimistic, we want to be obviously hopeful, we are damaged, I think, psychologically by Tottenham at times. And look, this panel are going to give you as much optimism, honesty, as I said, that they can give you. But I just want to start, if I can. Look, as a host, I always try and let the guys really do the talking, and I'm here just to kind of give you the facts. It's ultimately up to you, wonderful viewers and listeners, to make your own judgment. But I've got to say, for me, look, I think it's totally unacceptable, unforgivable that a Tottenham Hotspur team are 3-0 down at home in a North London derby at home to Arsenal. Regardless who the manager is, who the players are, who the chairman is, in my opinion, it's totally and utterly unacceptable. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to try and dress it up. But I'll be honest with you, as you guys know that have watched Last Word on Spurs for over the last 7-8 years, there's two things that hurt me the most. Cup exits, losing to Arsenal. Those are the two things that hurt me the most. And look, that result does mean for Tottenham that unfortunately that mathematically we can no longer finish above Arsenal for a third season in a row. And look, from my perspective, before we ask the guys here, you know, we've had 15 days away to address elements that aren't quite right. And we've conceded 2 goals from set pieces in the opening 38 minutes. So look, I could say a lot more. I will say a lot more. But I want to leave it down to these wonderful guys here that are going to give you their analysis on it. If I can, Russ, I'm going to open up with you. And I'll try and be as balanced as I possibly can. Look, Arsenal, you could say the word streetwise, tactically outdid Spurs in that first half, who simply didn't really learn from their mistakes, especially in terms of starting games with the energy. And, you know, you can't give teams like Arsenal or any side in that top 3 a 2-0 head start. That's exactly what Spurs did. It was a spirited second half, although you could argue, and I'm going to say this, both the goals were gift wrapped for Tottenham. You had Raya passing it straight to Romero, and Rice literally kicking Davis halfway up in the air. Mike Oliver not to even spot it, but VAR did intervene and gave Spurs something on the day. But defensively, not good again. And I genuinely think real questions, Russ, have to be asked here. I know we're in a rebuild. I know it's the manager's first season. I know you go and look at the first season of Arteta, Klopp, Guardiola, but Russ, give me your thoughts on the back of that game.
Well, obviously, we all agree it wasn't good enough. I think for a little bit of clarity, they are a cigarette paper away from Man City in the league. So we have to accept that at the moment they are a better football team than us. They've got a better manager. They have a better plan. And it's just the way it is. But I'm with you to a certain extent, Rick. In fact, more than a certain extent, that, you know, a lot of our fan base, including myself, have lamented that there doesn't seem to be a plan B. So in the 2 weeks since the humiliation of at Newcastle. And incidentally, 1.5 games of football, we've conceded 7 goals, 7. And we've had horror results in recent months. What do you think, if you were the manager of Spurs, you would be doing, knowing exactly what the problems are, consistent problems with set pieces? You'd be working on that. But in terms of taking on Arsenal and actually getting a result against them, what would you do, Rick? What would you do? Because I think there's an obvious answer, and I bet you it hasn't been done very much. Okay, let me put you out of your misery.
Please.
Watch the videos of Bayern Munich against Arsenal. How did they do it? How did they play? How did they set up? Forget about this fact, we only play in one way. Bayern Munich did a job on Arsenal, and they're not as good a football team. That's a fact. So we needed to, what I'm saying is we needed to be smarter in the way that we set up. And we can come on, I know we're going to talk about the starting 11 and who should have started, who shouldn't have started. But I think that we've got a kind of coaching managerial naivety from where I'm looking. I could be wrong. It's just my opinion. We've all got our opinions and they're all as valid as everybody else, okay? I'm not the Oracle, you're not Rick, you're not Pat, you're not TJ, you're not listener or viewer, but we've all got valid points. I mean, our football team has not played well, arguably, since November, really. Ange ball is a total myth currently. It's a total myth. Stop using the term. It doesn't exist. Panic ball does. Clueless ball. All these, phrases come to mind when I watch us play. And I desperately wanted us to do well. But when you see the way that we started today, we didn't start fast. We didn't put them under pressure. They are a very, very clever football team. And I absolutely hate it. It gets stuck in my throat when I have to say that. Fortunately, my other half who does support them is not here. She is abroad. So I had the sofa and I could actually cry and rage without looking like a man baby. But the final thing I would say is, and I know we're going to come on to Ange obviously later on, for him to come out afterwards and say, well, set pieces are not the only issue. There's lots of issues all over the place. The only thing I would say is all the successful football teams in any league have a solid defense. They do not concede goals. So if we are leaking goals, and I think it was 15 corners we've conceded from, I'll be corrected, but it's around that. And of course, we see it today with an own goal from Højbjerg. We see it with a free header, zonal marking, nonsense. You would be sorting that out, because if we concede goals, we ain't going to win football matches. And there's a really big reason with Spurs. We haven't got the firepower to score enough goals. And that's another issue. So I've finished now. I'm going to have a sip of wine and listen to some therapy from you and TJ and Pat and the viewers.
What a game we've got to try and get into. What a game. You know what? Yeah. Look, I'm going to let TJ just quickly sort out his connection. It's just flickering slightly. So we'll let TJ come back in, come back out. I'm going to go to Pat if we can. Pat, too little, too late for Spurs. That we did too much really self-inflicted damage in that first half. Just poor goals to give away. And once again, leaving ourselves with too much to do by the nature of those goals. But Pat, I've got to read this here. Tottenham in 2024, games played 12, goals from played conceded 9, goals from set pieces 7. It's 16 overall for the season. And I think if you look at the game as a whole, Pat, and you were there, it feels like that game was basically lost because we couldn't and didn't defend from set pieces. And look, the reality is that, we can't keep, as I mentioned to Russ there in the intro, keep giving teams a head start. And you know what? Arsenal, this is the most frustrating thing. Arsenal did not have to play that well to be 3-0 up. They genuinely did not have to play that well to be 3-0 up. But the nature of the goals that we give away, and look, you could see Arsenal, quite honestly, had studied Tottenham. They had studied Tottenham's weaknesses in terms of the areas they're at fault. The transitions where Spurs get caught in is a big factor, along with the fact that Spurs' real lacking self-sufficiency from set pieces is there for all to see. And when you look at the fact that, look, it's now 4 down v Brighton, 3 down v Fulham, 4 against Newcastle, 3 against Arsenal. We've now conceded 7 without reply in the last 2 games. And look, I'm not just leveraging that Ange. I'm leveraging it on the players. I'm leveraging it on them as a whole. This, Pat, is simply not good enough. What was you making of it, Pat? You were there, unfortunately.
Yeah, first and foremost, I want to say good evening or good. I can't say good night because that means that I'm going to bed. But hello to all
Pat. Put us all to bed.
Yeah, hello to all the viewers and listeners. Good morning if you're listening to this on the reruns tomorrow or later on in the week. Where do I start, Ricky? Where do I start? And where do I start, Russ? Going back to the summer when I was on here, I've been on so many, the Football Terrace, Saeed's Best of the Rest, lots of different shows, Premier League Unpacked, and I said I didn't want Ange Postecoglou, and I got hit with pelters, and people said I'm crazy and I'm this and I'm that, and again, I alluded to Ange Postecoglou in the Champions League. So when I looked at Ange Postecoglou, admittedly, I didn't know as much as I could have or should have, but then again, why would I? But when I looked into him and studied him, and I said, how do I fear Ange will do against the quality teams? Because typically in the leagues he was in, his team was always the best. He always had access to the most funds, the best players, and pretty much, even though he was a very good manager, he was the best team in that league. So when I tried to compare it to where we are as a football club, and I compared him to the Champions League ilk teams, your Arsenals, your Cities, your Liverpools, your Man Uniteds, Newcastles, whoever, and I looked at Ange Postecoglou in the Champions League, I was really worried because his record in the Champions League against the big teams was really poor. And I said it to you guys, and I said it to everyone here. Tactically, Ange Postecoglou isn't good enough to basically take us to where we want to go. And again, people got at me and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And he started well, fantastic. But unfortunately, everything I said has come into fruition. And when I looked at his record in the Champions League against the good teams, Celtic 0, Real Madrid 3, Leipzig 3, Celtic 1, Celtic 0, Leipzig 2, Real Madrid 5, Celtic 1. And I remember that Real Madrid game where he got applauded. Oh, they're playing fantastic football. They're this, they're that. But it, like today, they were 3-0 down at half time. And I'm sorry as well. I know you guys are saying that it's the players. At the end of the day, the buck stops with the manager. This manager is still making sure that we do zonal marking on corners. It hasn't worked all season. It's not worked. I can see it. Everyone can see it. But yet we're doing that. We concede every time there's a corner. We're all shaking. We're all nervous. We're hiding behind the couch or the TV or biting our nails because literally every time there's a corner, a team's going to score against us. And we conceded 2 goals off corners today. Like, exactly, all the goals today were soft. Like, we just allowed Arsenal to pretty much score at will. Like, we controlled possession, cool, better XG, more shots on target, more corners. But at the end of the day, the actual stat that actually matters, which is goals scored and obviously goals conceded, we're yet again coming up short. And it is a problem, man. When you're 3-0 down at half time, and to be fair, I was shell-shocked in the stadium, and I think a lot of the fans were because, I don't know, me watching it without commentary, just watching it myself, and I thought we played quite well. And I thought that we were the better team. And I thought that we was in control. But every time they had a chance or an effort on goal, they scored. And it's happening a lot. And something's not right because this is happening a lot. And I keep saying it. We're so easy to play against. We're so predictable. We play the same way in every game. And it's just easy. It's easy for teams to suss us out and know what we're going to do. And Russ made a great point. Bayern Munich changed the way they play to make sure that they obviously had Arsenal's number. And every team I watch when they play Arsenal do change things a bit. We don't. And we just always keep coming up short. And yeah, to be 3-0 down, you give yourself a mountain to climb. No matter how good you're going to be in the second half, you've got to score at least 3 goals and not concede to even give yourself a chance. And I don't know. It's a really weird one for me because I know Ange isn't tactically good enough. I don't know if he's ever going to change. So realistically, will he get better and will he be the manager to take us forward? But then also on the same hand, I saw a team today that was really unlucky. A VAR goal that was chalked off, could have stood on another day. We hit the post on another day. That's a goal. We had 1 penalty, thank God. It's only our 2nd penalty of the season. We should have had a penalty before Saka scored, in my opinion. And then obviously James Maddison and Kulusevski both got brought down. And then literally off that transition, Saka scores and makes it 2-0. Yeah, we were just really unlucky. But then also at the same time, teams that have a bit about them know how to contain us and then hit us. So, you know, there's only so many times you can be unlucky before you have to really look at yourself and say, why are we always unlucky? So I don't know. I'm a bit all over the place, if I'm being honest. I know, like, it's really good that we're doing this at 8:30 or 8:56 now. The game finished at 2 o'clock. So it has allowed me to kind of calm down a bit because, yeah, I mean, again, the thing is, people won't like what I'm going to say, but I personally don't think Ange is good enough. I don't think tactically he's good enough to take us where we want to go. I'm tired of seeing us be so naive and easy to play against. And although, yes, we have looked good in certain moments, and when the team's conceding 2 or 3 times a game, every game, and we're just so soft on corners and simple things, this guy's not changing, then, yeah, in my opinion, you're not good enough. And obviously, yeah, we're finished this season. Cool. Whatever, but unless things change drastically next year, it's just going to be more and more the same.
Can I ask you, Pat, just a follow up before I go to TJ? If he does get serious back in the summer and is given significant funds, you still don't think you trust him with those funds to be able to spend them wisely so he get better players to work for his system? Is that where you're at?
You can have the best players in the world, but if you're going to concede every time they take a corner, then what's the difference, Ricky? I think we've got a fantastic goalkeeper. In my opinion, one of the best in the Premier League. Our 2 centre-backs, it's annoying to say because I argue their case every single game. I still think they're brilliant centre-backs. But obviously, when you're shipping 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, people are going to say, oh, how are they that good if you're conceding so many goals?
The only reason I want to ask you this, Pat, is just to let you follow up on this, is that a lot of people leverage at Spurs. There's many that are watching this show right now and think, these Spurs fans, are they really self-entitled that every 18, 24 months they can just keep changing the manager? They don't watch Spurs week in, week out. Granted, they didn't see the first 10 games where, again, you can maybe look in hindsight that Spurs really maybe caught teams by surprise because it was a brand new brand of football. It was new players. It was a series of adjustments. And I think those that watch Spurs week in, week out, I don't use that term proper Spurs, but for those that have watched Spurs over the 20 games, Spurs have really beaten teams by the odd goal, bar the Aston Villa result, bar the Newcastle win. They've all been fairly close games where at times you would feel Spurs should have comprehensively beaten teams more. So to let you come back on this question, Pat, you in your mind at the moment feel, despite being given more money, you look at the fact for a number of managers, Klopp, Guardiola, Arteta, their first seasons for all of them were quite rocky. You feel tactically he's not good enough for this job?
Ricky, I'll put it this way. Arteta last year, they probably played the best football in the league. They were really unlucky. If we take aside all the banter and take our football hats off. Arsenal were, I know obviously they did bottle and capitulate, but they played, in my opinion, they were probably the best team if you're looking at the whole 38 game season and how good they were and solid. And even this year, Arteta tweaked things. He brought in Kai Havertz. At the beginning of the season, they weren't gung-ho and going crazy and scoring loads of goals. They were more defensively solid. And then slowly but surely, they started to build. This is a manager who, even though he had a good season last year, he saw things and he tweaked it. I haven't seen that intelligence from Ange Postecoglou yet. So obviously things can change and hopefully they do get better. But when I look at the best managers, tactically they're intelligent. Even Unai Emery, when things weren't working, he changes things slightly in the game and had changed things to set up against different teams. I've not seen that from Ange Postecoglou once this season. And correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, guys. Let me know if you've seen it in certain games. I haven't. And if that's not going to change, then Ricky, unfortunately, bluntly, no.
TJ, I want to bring you in. Look, I just want to make this point here that perspective is really, really important when we do these shows. And there's many that say, look, don't demand the rebuilds if you haven't got the stomach to go through them. We've had Conte, we've had Mourinho, we've had sit deep football, we've had, 10, 11 men behind the ball. I think this is where I'm really, really, for me, hamstrung here. I absolutely love the way Ange Postecoglou speaks. I think he's a great spokesman. I think he embodies everything I want in a Tottenham Hotspur manager by the way this man acts. But I would be totally and utterly lying if I didn't sit here and say I've got deep, deep concerns by the nature of the way Spurs seem to be having a number of reoccurring themes that aren't addressed. And I appreciate it's season 1. I appreciate there's a transition of new players, of a new manager, of a new style. And I'm trying to take my mind back to Pochettino's first season, where we had some really bad home defeats. We lost to Stoke. We lost to West Brom. As we know, Spurs didn't finish in the European places in that first season, I don't believe. And ultimately with Tottenham, there was a feeling that we can see a direction. We can see a plan. And I saw that definitely with Tottenham in the first 10, 12 games. Forget about even after the Chelsea game. We had those couple of defeats. And we saw against Aston Villa and West Ham, Spurs were still playing their football. They were still playing to the word of Ange ball, what it was at the time. And as I said, I really, really, really want this to work. I absolutely love him as a human being, as I've said. But there are certain things that are deeply concerning me. So where are you, TJ, with regards to this result and overall where you stand at the moment on this current debate?
I think where I am is right alongside all of us. And like Pat said, we are a little shell-shocked. It's difficult not to be, almost impossible not to be. You shipped 3 goals to your arch nemesis in one half of football, especially coming off 15 days rest. And then another result where you get beaten 4-0 by, an okay Newcastle team. They're okay. And we made them look very, very good. So there's an awful lot to unpack here today. I will say I'm not feeling Ange out for a second. Not for a second. When there's a crisis, and we take our football so seriously, right? It's deeply ingrained in us. And even when Sonny did that really charming interview with Tom Holland, and he met Zendaya and all that kind of thing, and he gave her the Tottenham stuff, he said to her very seriously, this is for life. And she laughed, and he went, I'm serious. So it's for life, right? It really matters to us. And even if you wanted to flip an allegiance, even if you ever had that inclination, you just can't do it. It's like those people who say, I support 2 teams. Oh, I support Tottenham, but I also support Madrid. No, you don't. Because if Tottenham play Madrid in the Champions League, who you cheer for is really who you support. So I'm not Ange out for a second. And I hear what you're saying, Rick, and I hear what everyone's saying. And a lot of people are agreeing with you in the comments. And, the other panelists have also had their opinions. I do think that in a crisis situation, it's very natural for people to look for a reason and or a person to blame for that crisis. We're emotional creatures, right? And so it's just like, well, how could that have happened? I think the pragmatic answer to that, and to Russ's great point, he's such a great orator, such an articulate gentleman, always honored to be on the show with you, brother Russ, is that the pragmatic answer, in my opinion, to that is a multitude of factors. It doesn't come down to Ange Postecoglou. It doesn't come down to recruitment. It doesn't come down to Levy. It doesn't come down to a quote unquote Spursy attitude. It is an amalgamation of a great many things that this club has suffered from for decades. And so, yes, there are wholesale changes that need to be made. There was a gentleman who was reaching out to all of us on Twitter, talking about Ange's comments about set pieces aren't the problem. How I took that is that he is trying to implement holistic fixes, not just one fix. However, me and the rest of us would say, yes, but except we have an enormous issue defending set pieces. Russ, I think it is 15 goals from set pieces. I think 12 from corners and then 3 from free kicks. So I think it is 15, even if it's in and around there, mate.
Yeah, 16, but yeah, you're right. 15, 16. Yep.
I think it is. And we can all see as well, Vicario, we love you. I know Mac is a huge Vicario fan, right? Always talking about, I think, we were talking about, is he the best goalkeeper in the league? Guys, we love him. He's nowhere near the best goalkeeper in the league. You can't be the best at anything if you have one glaring deficiency in your game, and it's a big part of what you do for a living. If you were a plumber, he's the best plumber in the game, but he can't do jacuzzis, well, then you are not the best plumber in the game. And so we have numerous issues. However, guys, we are 5th. We're not 15th. And I often think if we were 15th, people would almost give us, okay, let's write the season off and we'll just look forward to next season. We're 5th, so either we flattered to deceive, or we're not as bad as a lot of us think we are. With love.
Yeah, listen, I mean, what I will say again is that we've got over 3,500 of you watching us live, and look, there's no doubt about it. When you watch this show live, not everyone's going to agree with what all of we say, but the most important thing about the show is that we always try and retain an authentic nature to it. We want everybody to come here and say their truth and not feel they've got to tone down what they say.
Vicky, can I just say one thing? Because I saw a lot of the comments. I was reading through the comments, and obviously people are definitely entitled to obviously come back to my opinion and stuff. I didn't say I'm Ange out. I just said I don't think Ange, if he doesn't change tactically, is the man to take us forward. Yes. He's here now. I'm going to get behind him. I'm going to support him, as you guys have seen. But if he doesn't change his tactics and tweak things and adapt, like an Arteta has, like a Jurgen Klopp has, like a Pep Guardiola has, who all, like you rightfully said, Ricky, had rookie-ish first seasons. If he continues to play like he is doing now, he's not going to be the man to take us forward. So I need to see that from Ange. Yep. I need to see tactical intelligence. He's got to this level. He's obviously a good coach, but some of the stuff he's doing is very naive. And if that doesn't change, I'm just voicing how I feel right now, to be fair. When you're shipping 3 goals,
I think you made it very clear.
Game, and you're conceding on the same manner in every game.
You as well, Pat. I don't think you're saying for a second.
No,
I didn't say
none of us have.
You've got to clear that up because people take things
mature, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think, again, the reality is when you record like this, I say, on match day and hours after, there is emotion. But I think the one thing that we try and bring to this show is that balance where it's not ranty, it's not shouting and screaming, it's people trying to make an observation based on what they're saying. Yeah. And again, I don't want to be arrogant, but I feel the reason why Last Word on Spurs, for me, is ultimately the best show out there, Spurs podcast-wise,
well said,
is because we have incredible guests that come on, give their views, and are able to give their views in a much articulate way that they wish to, and shouldn't be shouted down for that. And again, the reality is these fans that come on this show go in, week out, they watch the games from all across the world, and everyone's entitled to their view. I mean, that result, just to put it into context, that was only the second time ever Arsenal had a North London derby at half-time. And we've come on to this, the fact that they exploited Spurs' 2 big weaknesses, defending from corners, stopping transitions. And, again, whatever you want to say about Arsenal and Arteta, I think the reality is that it does feel that teams do their homework on Spurs. And, many I know didn't want to go too much into looking into Eric Dyer's comments around the way he used the word tactical about the way Spurs play. But it does feel for me at the moment, which is concerning to me deeply. And look, as I've said, I really, really want this to work under Ange Postecoglou. I can't say that enough. I like him as a bloke. I think he talks ever so well. He's the kind of guy that I want that embodies my football club. But at the same time, if, no doubt about it, if we're not getting better at the glaring errors that we're seeing week after week, we've got to call them out because it is massively, massively concerning. Now, after the game, Ange said, we wanted to win for our supporters and for the club. We didn't do that. And whatever I think about the performance, it's still the outcome that sits on you. I thought our general football was good. It was decent. We controlled the game for long periods. For most part of that, we know we're a team that can do that. It's all about now, over the course of time, getting from where we are to where we want to be. To do that, we're still not absolutely laser focused on the details, the small things that get you from where we are to become a team that contends. And credit to Arsenal, they're there now. And I think this is a really, really key point he says here. They're a team that does the details well. We don't. We allow them to have way too much access to our goal. They only got there 3 or 4 times and they scored 3 goals. It's not acceptable. We're still not resilient enough, particularly in transition moments or a set piece. We allow far too easy access to the goal. He repeated that again. And you know what? Interesting, Russ, to come over to you. He actually has admitted before this game that Spurs don't have, to some degree, a designated specialist when it comes to a set-piece coach. And for those that raise this question a lot on Last Word on Spurs, Gianni Veo, just to be very, very clear, the guy that Spurs had last season, brought in under Conte, need to make this clear. Gianni Veo was an attacking set-piece coach. He was not a defensive set-piece coach. Spurs to date have conceded 16 goals, 16 from, of course, set pieces overall. And that's why there is that overall concern. But after the game, Russ, he was questioned by Ali Gold, friend of the show.
Yeah.
He was asked, in regards to the tactical element of defending set pieces, is there a reason why Spurs aren't defending better. And, ultimately, he said from his perspective, no, it's because understanding where you are as a football team. If I thought fixing the defence set pieces was the answer to bridging the gap, then I'd put all my time and effort into that. But that's not where we're at. For us, it's about when I was focused on the details of not just set pieces, but a lot of the moments in the games where we don't sense that you give good opposition the time and the space to the things that are going to hurt you. I think that they maybe had 4 attempts on our goal in the first half and they conceded 3. I don't think it's about one part. I think it's a bigger, broader picture than that. But our defensive set pieces for those 2 were very, very poor. But there's a lot more than that to fix. Do you just think, Russ, could he not have just come out there and said, we do have an issue at set pieces. We're fully aware of that, and we're working on them. Would that have been a big, hard admittance to make, or do you think within his statement there,
he should have said that. He should have said that. In the Tottenham house, if the basement is flooded, you don't fix the broken windows on the first floor first, do you? You go down the basement, stop the water coming in, and that's a defence. I think, look, this takes us into the summer. I'm not Ange out, although I think if we get to Christmas time, January, February of next year, and it's still not going very well, I think questions justifiably will be asked. He is an employee of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. Mikel Arteta has been at Arsenal now for a few years, and we know what he's done, but he's been supported by the Kroenke family on an amazing scale. Once they realise this bloke is actually good and knows what he's doing with the team behind him. So is Daniel Levy going to give Ange Postecoglou the power to bring in the players that he wants? I'm sure he's got some ideas, and say goodbye to the players that he doesn't want, because in brutal terms, the Timo Werners of this world probably are not going to be at the club if we want to get better and actually improve. And there's a lot of them as well. But is he going to be brutal enough to say to some of his coaches, sorry, boys, we just have been too vulnerable across so many games. We're not playing as I want us to play, and I'm going to bring in some new coaches. That is a very reasonable question to ask. But he can't keep coming out in press conferences after the game, and if it's gone badly, he tends to navel gaze, doesn't he, when he's talking, reporters there, and mumble away and sort of say, well, I don't think it's as big a problem as other things. There's a whole load of problems that we've got. Pat was absolutely right. The buck does stop with him. And you would have thought that Ange Postecoglou would know that even though they're doing well, it's in Arsenal's DNA to wobble when they're under pressure. But we didn't make a fast start. Okay, we might have tried to, but we didn't, or we weren't allowed to. It goes back to the point I made about watching how Munich played them twice. And Munich aren't as good as Arsenal. Fact. Even with Harry, they're not. And when they're on song, but they were stopped. And Munich turn up in the semi-finals of the Champions League. Thank goodness, by the way. But to come out and sort of generalise, when people like Ali Gold are trying to actually ask the questions that he thinks are obvious and the fans want an answer to, I think you've got to be very careful there, because, after a while you run out of goodwill. And I'm with you, Rick, that, I think he's a great bloke. I think he's a lovely human being. I think he's got a pretty reasonable football track record. But when I dared to say about a month ago, well, Scotland and Japan are not exactly the Premier League, and I think he's finding that out. I was told that by some people that I was patronising. I'm not patronising to him at all. I'm just stating what appears to my eyes and many other people's eyes to be the harsh truth of how we are playing. Now, we could have the tactics right and the players are not listening. Different discussion. Players don't understand. Different discussion. So that's where I think we are. It's a difficult one to put your finger on, apart from when you look at the results.
Yep. I mean, it's hard because, again, I will also say this here, for those that watch this show and watching it live or listening back, there's a genuine love for what Ange Postecoglou brought to Spurs from the start of the season. No one's denying that. No one's dismissing that. He's the kind of guy I think many would absolutely love have managing your football club I'm talking about from just a human being perspective, right? If you're looking at somebody that you want to embody who you would like to manage your football club, this guy is it. He's everything. He's respectful. He understands the fans' opinions. He doesn't ram it down your throat when you've had a defeat. He allows you to feel the way you want to feel. There's been times under Jose, under Conte, where, quite honestly, let's be honest about it, some of those managers weren't very much, I'd say, open to the way players or fans, should I say, feel. But I want to ask you, TJ, because this has come up on a number of occasions, that Ange explained that from his perspective, he wants all aspects of his side to be integrated, which is why he does not feel comfortable hiring specialists to coach one particular area, such as set pieces. He said at the time, I've never had a specific set piece coach. I've always had someone who's responsible for that. I always think that it's better if that's somebody who's part of the coaching staff, but that's an extension of how we play our football. I don't separate set pieces from anything else we do in terms of the team we want to be. It all hopefully links in. Here we split the roles between myself, Millie Jedinak, Ryan Mason in terms of attacking and defensive set pieces, and they put a lot of work into those with the analytics staff. I'm sure every club does. Some have gone down the specialised route, which I totally understand. I'm sure some very intelligent people will say this is all part of the process, but this has been this is all part of the process. TJ, just on this point, do you look at Spurs and feel this should be an area where we have a genuine specialist looking after it when you look at the amount of goals Spurs are conceding?
Yes. And I think that this is part of the frustration, is that if you see, to Russ's analogy of the basement being flooded, turn the water off, plug that leak. And the problems at Tottenham are almost systemic now, because we've had so long without the success, without the trophies, that a club of our size and stature, with the history that we have, unless we're all deluded, genuinely, are we all deluded? Are we not seeing the reality of our club? But then, if I take allegiances aside and I do look at the structure, and I look at the infrastructure of the club, and I look at the potential of the club, and I look at the amount of money that has been spent, and then the amount of money that hasn't been spent. The fact that we didn't bring Leandro Trossard into the club, and does he start or does Martinelli start? Again, we have to be honest and go, that lot, their second string are better than 95% of our first string. It's just as simple as that. When you do that combined 11, people go, oh, no Tottenham players made it into the side. Is that such a surprise? So I do look at a glaringly obvious, erroneous part of the club. And I say, mate, you've got to fix that. I do think that a lot of that could come down to one person, and that is Vicario. Just be stronger, mate. Just be stronger physically. If you don't have the weight, strength is a funny thing. You can look at those, like, I know a lot of people who are military guys, and a lot of it is kind of what they call power to weight ratio. I'm a big guy, right? And then some of my friends who are much smaller than me and lighter than me are stronger than me, because they're special forces guys and they have, tension in their muscles and all this kind of thing. So there are ways to just be stronger. And if you can't do that, then fake it by being aggressive. You know what I mean? If Ben White comes up behind you and starts pulling your arm, turn around and push the guy. You're not going to get a yellow card or anything.
Do something. Do something, right? Do something.
Brother, they get so much protection. So if there's a sunbed permatanned, highlighted moron covered in tattoos with his shorts pulled up to his belly button, pulling at your elbow, turn him around and give him a bloody good shove. And if he gives you a hard time,
you don't like him then.
Yeah, and also, Romero's then going to step in and sort him out. So just show that you've got a little bit fire to you, and then people are going to be less inclined to bully you on corners. And so that is an issue. Again, I do want to state, however, there are holistic fixes at Tottenham that need to be changed. Again, Russ, while you're talking so articulately, Pat, you, Ricky, all of the people chiming in, all of our listeners and watchers, we have multiple issues here. And brother Russ, when you said, I can't put my finger on it, because, mate, you'd need at least 10 to try to put your fingers on all of the issues that we have at Tottenham. And I genuinely believe the number one issue we have at Tottenham is systemic. We are kind of quote unquote, we lose too much. We get to the point where we just don't get it over the line. I do believe as soon as we can make that change, and I do think Ange could be the guy to do it, I don't think it's going to be fair to judge him until Daniel Levy and the board write a check. Write a check. Arsenal has spent £800 million. Write a check. Get him some of the players that he wants. Get rid of some of the players that we all know should have left this club a long time ago. Get rid of some of them. Just cancel their contracts like they did with Nicolas Pepe, and he cost £85 million back in the day. And they just cancelled his contract. Be ruthless. Get these people out. Get some new people in. And then let's see what Ange can do. And if it's not happening at the end of next season, maybe Christmas of the season following, then we can start to have conversations. Maybe this isn't our guy. But give us a chance. Build a team that we can actually get behind, that look like they could win something.
Listen, I think, TJ, that's all fair points. And again, I think, when you look at Spurs over the course of the season, again, I know many say it's an anomaly, the first 10, and I think I've got to be honest with you and say on reflection now, looking back, I think we did catch teams by surprise. I think, again, a new manager, instilling a brand new type of football, again, new players coming into the fore. I think there was an element of surprise about Spurs. I mean, my concerns, as I'm sure Russ has shared for a long, long time on Last Word on Spurs, definitely over the last few months has been there's an element where teams have Spurs out to some degree. Is that because he doesn't have his own players? You could argue that. I mean, again, we have to remember he's only had 2 transfer windows. The likes of, again, Klopp, Arteta, Guardiola were given 3 to 4 windows before there's a judgment there. And again, I don't want to come across self-entitled because as Spurs fans, we have chopped and changed so many managers over the course of the last 3-4 years. But at the same time, I will just say this. I don't think it's right to also be blindly going along with something if you just generally don't feel it's working. And I think this is why this show is here, so fans can give their view and say what they are seeing. And again, we can only say what we're seeing based on what we're watching. And again, I think this show does reflect the balance of that. There's definitely 100% the need for Ange Postecoglou to, you could argue, to be given more time. But again, you have to say at the same time, is there an element where there's going to be some form of change in his tactics? Russ mentioned a point on a previous cut of shows. You look back at where he managed at Japan, of course, during his time at Australia, during his time at Yokohama. And what I would say is on those clubs, and taking Australia out of it for a second, on those 2 clubs in Pacific, he had the best available players and Celtic for those best teams. So the argument is he'd go into a season on the back of his first season there and have his best players available that would be the best in that league. He's not going to get that at Tottenham. He's not going to get the same level of caliber players that Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal are going to get. Arguably, you'd say, I dare say Manchester United, with them probably coming back under Dan Ashworth, whoever the next manager is going to be there. So the biggest thing for me, as Pat said earlier, is this guy going to show an ounce of tactical flexibility? And my concern is that when you look at this guy's history, he doesn't. That's not to say he won't, but the history tells you he doesn't. So look, we will see. We are going to go for our belated first break of the show for our listeners on audio. I want to say again, we're joined by the wonderful broadcast extraordinaire, Russ Williams, actor TJ Ramini, and Chatty Patty return here. Lots of chat in here. I will just say again, thank you so much. Over 4,500 of you watching Last Word on Spurs live. Again, thank you so much for all your incredible support for the show. Just a very quick reminder, if I can, that we are delighted on Last Word on Spurs to be sponsored by NordVPN. We're lucky to have had Nord as our partners for over 3.5 seasons, I will say, on Last Word on Spurs. And look, for those that do watch football on the move, on the go, all around the world, it is a great, great tool for those that are looking to catch sport, whether it be over the course of different countries or in different locations. NordVPN allows you to change your location settings. It's also great for holidays. So if you're looking at potentially trying to book somewhere and you can change your location settings, you can get holidays at a discounted rate depending on where you go. You can go right to them right now, nordvpn.com/LWS, to get yourself a discount off there. So in terms of the game itself, just to touch upon the game, which we've not even got into yet, can you believe? In terms of stats for the game, 14 shots for Spurs, 9 for Arsenal, the 2 on target for Spurs, Arsenal with 3. Spurs committing 12 fouls in respective, Arsenal 16. Possession, Tottenham dominated as a whole with 62%, with Arsenal 38. And the XG quite telling, 2.73% for Tottenham, 1.28 for Arsenal. I think what was quite a telling stat for Spurs is that Christian Romero, I believe, had doubled the amount of any Arsenal player on the XG, given just how, I would say, attacking that guy was on the day. We're going to come on to him shortly. But again, thank you so much for your incredible support. We appreciate every statement that comes in. We really, really do. And look, we're going to come on to the team for this one because the team was a big sparking debate. And Pat, I'm going to come around to you if I can. Spurs making 3 changes for the North London derby, which I think in essence, Pat, maybe tells you that Spurs don't really know their best midfield at the moment. We knew going into the game, Destiny Udogie was out for the remainder of the season after a freak injury in training required quadriceps surgery. But obviously the Australian lifted the news by the return of Pedro Porro and Richie returning for full training this week. The Spurs boss stated Ben Davies would come into the team to replace Destiny Udogie, which he did at left back. Richie returned to the bench and having not started a game in 2 months with skipper Heung-min Son remaining through the middle, we saw Davies come back in. And prior to this game, we know Davies never lost a home North London derby. Timo Werner started on the left. He came off later subsequently with a muscle injury in that first half. And Dejan Kulusevski, who came a father for the first week, came back into the team. And on the right for Brennan Johnson. In the midfield, Pierre-Emerick Højbjerg came in for only his 7th Premier League start of the season, alongside Rodrigo Bentancur and James Maddison, with Yves Bissouma benched. Before the game, Ange admitted he selected Kulusevski and Højbjerg to start against Arsenal due to their recent performances in training. That team read Vicario, Porro Romero, Van der Ven, Davis, Bentancur, Højbjerg, Maddison, Kulusevski, Son, Werner, with a bench of Austin Emerson, Dragoshin, Bissouma, Sarr, Lo Celso, Johnson, Hill, Richie on the bench. Pat, I'll come to you. Thoughts on the team? Did Ange get that team wrong?
No, I really liked the lineup. When I saw it, I was inspired. I thought that Højbjerg, every time Højbjerg's played, for all of his deficiencies, he is a very solid defensive midfielder. Technically, a lot better than people give him credit for. Defensively, in terms of position, he's a bit more disciplined than probably a Bissouma or a Sarr. So I like the fact that he would probably just sit and try and sweep and mop up. It then allows Bentancur to get on the ball and move it forward. And we obviously know what Maddison will try and do in that number 10 position. Werner, obviously hit and miss with the fan base, but I do think that he has been effective more often than not. And I like Kulusevski. I love his energy. I think he's such a skillful player. And I thought he had a fantastic game today. I mean, that pirouette or that when he literally spun 2 Arsenal players and he was winning the ball back, could have had a penalty, should have had a penalty on another day. You know, we won't talk about Michael Oliver and what he does and doesn't give us. Son down the middle, I keep saying this every time. As much as I love Son and I think he's a fantastic player, when you play him down the middle, you lose some of his effectiveness and you don't get the best version of Heung-min Son. When Richarlison came on through the middle and Son was out on the left, he was much more effective. But obviously needs must, like you said, Richie not having played or started in 2 months, I understand why that didn't happen. Ben Davies coming in makes sense. Defensively, he's very good. Obviously, he's not going to have the dynamic, up and down or legs or wing back, literally what Udogie does. But yeah, all in all, that team was a good team. I liked it. It had balance. It had enough attacking impetus or intent. In hindsight, did Ange get it wrong? Maybe, because when Richarlison came on down the middle and Son was on the left, we did look a lot better. Even when Yves Bissouma came on, he seemed to transition the ball a lot better. Yves Bissouma was really good today, by the way. He has been hit and miss this season. There are times when he does look out of it, but I thought he was really calm and cool on the ball in the second half. And a lot of the stuff that basically a lot of the transitions and attacking play came through him. So he was really good when he came on. So the subs were good, but that is the beauty of having decent players on the bench. You can change things up. Brennan Johnson, watching the stadium, maybe I'm wrong when you guys watched it at home, but I don't really remember him doing too much when he came in for Timo Werner. But I thought Højbjerg had a decent game. He was unfortunate with that with the own goal. It was crazy. That wasn't good. But other than that, I thought Mickey van der Ven was fantastic. The amount of times that Arsenal players had the run on him and he mocked up and swept up and made tackles. And yeah, Martinelli is lightning quick. And Mickey van der Ven caught him every single time. Like no one gets any change out of him. And I thought Romero today, again, a lot of people don't give the credit Romero deserves. Like that guy's insane. Like in terms of probably the best ball playing centre back in the league. Like what he does, no one talks about it. His passing through the middle of the field, breaking lines is insane. The guy can clearly finish. He's a better finisher than a lot of our wingers. One-on-one, he tucked his chance away, hit the post as well. The guy's a problem. He's a nuisance. He's an offensive threat, and obviously defensively, he's really good. I thought Pedro Porro
showed incredible discipline as well today.
Yeah.
Very, he didn't even get booked. In a North London derby where you're 3-0 down at half time, and he's such a leader of men by action and deed, and he didn't
that has gone so under the radar, TJ, hasn't it? I must say the way he's controlled, not just today, but the way he's controlled himself
100%
over the course. So when Andy's called him.
He's really grown as a person. Sorry to interrupt you, Patty. Carry on.
No, yeah, by all means, you're spitting, so no problem. I think Romero is such a good player, and he doesn't get the credit and applaudance he deserves. And I think, like TJ said, he was fantastic. Even I saw a little Barney and Romero's pushing players away and walking away. The guy's just so chilled and cool now, but on the pitch, he's intense. And, him putting David Raya under pressure, forcing him to make that pass and obviously slotting away, I thought that was brilliant. And, I thought Pedro Porro, considering he's been out, he was a doubt. I thought he was really good today. Created a lot of problems up and down that wing. So all in all, it's a really weird one because I said it earlier. I don't think we played badly. I thought we were the better team. I thought that we pretty much control. It's so strange to say. I mean, we were 3-0 down at half time, but it's hard. It's a hard one to digest because we didn't deserve to lose today. But then also at the same time, if you keep making the same mistakes in different games, then you kind of do deserve it. So it's a really weird one.
I mean, this is why, again, Pat, I will say for that opening segment of the show, that is why I feel we are the way we're feeling, many of us, is because we are seeing the same reoccurring theme happening time after time after time. And I think if we hadn't or don't address that, I think people might think we're going absolutely crazy. I mean, look, we want to be positive. We want to be optimistic. We want to talk about all the great things about Spurs. Believe me, we do. But also, I feel the show is here to provide some balance of realism as to what people are watching. So I could sit here and say, great for Spurs to get 2 goals in the second half. But I'm going to be honest with you and say, look, I want to think I'm a positive fan. One of the goals was a misplaced pass directly into Romero's stride. The other's a penalty where Ben Davies has been kicked halfway up in the air, which Michael didn't spot, can I just say. But I think we'd be nuts to not come onto it. I just think what I will say, Russ, bringing you in, is that my concern with the first 11s is that clearly... And it's not Andy's fault, maybe, at the moment. He just doesn't know his best midfield because we know Sarr's managing a back issue. Bentancur still coming back from an ACL. James Maddison, look, I think the reality with James Maddison is that when he's in his stride, he's absolutely superb. But Leicester fans have said this, that when he's coming back from an injury, it takes a while to get the James Maddison back that he can be on a week-to-week basis. And I think that's where we are with Maddison. Again, a fine player, but we need to try and get him back to that level he was. But unfortunately, we've got to look at that first goal, Russ. Arsenal taking the lead. Saka's near post corner. Nodded in by an unfortunate Højbjerg. He was battling with Tomiyasu. He could only steer it, his header beyond Vicario. And it all came after a poor Spurs giveaway in the build-up where they were trying to play out from the back. Arsenal made us pay. I mean, look, Højbjerg, you could say, really unlucky. But the context is, as we've said already, not to go back into it again, Spurs do have this problem conceding corners. Millie Jedinak in control of these. And Spurs go 1 down early on. And I just want to share this still, if I can, with regards to that opening goal. Because, again, many will argue the fact of the way Spurs are defending. You can see there clearly, many might feel that Vicario has been impeded there. But teams are starting now, Russ, as we've seen really from Goodison Park onwards, to really apply pressure on Vicario, which to me, I think that's fair to do. And it's up to Vicario to find a way through this because, again, tremendous shot stopper. But this is an area that we're going to have to find a solution for. Right, Russ?
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be, for me, a bit more commanding in the 6-yard box. I mean, the thing that was noticeable with the set piece goals that were conceded was the ease with which Arsenal players just wandered through our defence, unchallenged. And, this is the problem, isn't it? With zonal marking, really. They get in their head, my area's all right. And, of course, somebody else's isn't. So it just concerns me. They really, really, really need somebody. It's probably you can't reinvent the wheel now, you see, Rick. You've got to tweak it in the summer. We're too late into the season now. We're just going to have to sort of, go through the rest of these games, horrendous games, Chelsea away, Liverpool away, Man City at home, Burnley, Sheffield United, try and get a few points and at least have some European football. But it's really concerning, not only against the better teams, we've seen it against the so-called lesser teams as well, the way that they just can score against us very easily from set pieces. We're brittle. And I do think Pat was talking about the starting 11. I thought Romero was brilliant. I thought Decky was great today as well, actually. Almost looking like he's back to his best. The problem for him is, of course, he can't cross the ball because we haven't got a centre forward for him to aim at when he used to have Harry Kane. Sorry?
Apart from that, we're all right.
Yeah, apart from that, we're fine. And the other thing was with Højbjerg, I was like you, Pat. I thought, oh, yeah, I'm quite pleased he's in there. And then I thought to myself, hang on a minute, Odegaard is going to think, well, he's slow. I'll run round him all afternoon. But if you put Basuma in there,
I hate to say this, Russ. I mean, you might have heard it. Paul Merson in the build-up. I really, really hoped. I really hope Højbjerg was going to have one of those games to shut him up because he was going on and on in the build-up to this game.
Really? What was he saying?
About just the nature of Højbjerg wouldn't have been the right choice for Spurs. He slows them down defensively. He's caught out, and lo and behold, the first corner he goes and heads one in the back of his net. I mean, you couldn't make it up. It literally was like the gods were watching us. And it goes in. I mean, look, in terms of the way Spurs respond, as Pat put it eloquently earlier, Romero headed against the right-hand post for Maddison's free kick. And then we had that moment where, look, Porro's shot deflects into the path of Van der Ven. He runs onto it. He slams it in the net. For the VAR check, the goal was ruled out. And I want to come to TJ for this. Look, the ball strikes two Arsenal players.
Yes.
And look, before it reaches the Tottenham goal scorer. Now, the first of the two was Takehiro Tomiyasu, intentionally moving his body to block the initial shot. Yet VAR declares neither to have deliberately played the ball and Mickey Van der Ven to be offside. But look, the reality is, and the still won't do it justice, however we dress it up, it does appear that the right decision has been made. VAR has intervened and it is offside. But my frustration, TJ, and for those that are in the stadium like Pat was, is that the time it took to get to this decision. You're looking at 2.5 minutes. The fans were booing, even because I think the fans were feeling that ultimately they knew what was coming. But it's as you can see, it's so borderline here, isn't it? So borderline, the decision, TJ. What frustrates you more, the VAR decision or the fact we've got to wait 2.5 minutes to get the judgment?
This was a huge bone of contention for me personally. Rick, as you know, I'm on this show regularly, right, which I'm enormously appreciative of. One of the things that I tend to not do, and I don't really subscribe to, is the constant moaning about VAR decisions. We have it. It's imperfect. We all know that. Sometimes it goes for you. Sometimes it goes against you. I was on the show the day after that Liverpool game where there was a terrible VAR decision and they were literally acting like World War III had just been declared. It was a poor decision. It didn't work out. You lost the game. Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. However, my issue with this goal wasn't the offside, whether he's offside or not by a toenail or whatever it is the fact that the rules of the game stipulate that as an opposing player, if you make what's called a good or a positive action to play the ball, and it ends up at the feet of an opponent, whether they are offside or not, the offside is rendered mute. So Van der Ven could have been smoking a cigarette in the 6-yard box, chatting it up with Raya, and the ball comes to him and he could have tapped it in, and it just doesn't matter. The fact that it came off two Arsenal players who were trying to clear the ball, obviously they were under pressure, they just had a corner, Porro fires it in, you're trying to clear your lines, which is a positive action, and it ends up at the feet of an opponent, it's a goal. So to not know the rules that's not subjective. Like some people are saying the trip on Decky, that should have been given a penalty. It shouldn't have been given a penalty. To be honest, I'm okay to let that one go because it's so subjective. Even though the fact they went up the other end and scored, that one was so subjective. But the rules clearly state that if an opposing player makes a positive attempt to play the ball and it ends up at an opponent's feet and they knock it into the goal, it's a goal, whether you were offside or not. There's no need for the lines. There's no need for VAR. There's no need for an offside call. Did it come off an Arsenal player? It came off two. Were they trying to play it intentionally? Yes. Goal. The end.
It's difficult. I mean, look, many are feeling that in the context of the ruling here, it's offside. I think it's one of those where, again...
But offside is negated if it's played by the opposition.
I hear
if
what you're
the ball
saying.
is played by the opposition, it's negated. Those are the rules.
Yeah. Again, look, it didn't go in Spurs' favour. I don't know if many felt the same. I think the pivotal nature of that is I think had Spurs gone at 1-1, I think it's a totally and utterly different game. I genuinely do. And I know it's easy to say that because, again, you're playing against a side that are right towards the top of the Premier League. But, again, to have that frustration where you don't get the goal is really, really disheartening. And ultimately then you have this crazy 30 seconds where Spurs wanted a penalty in the build-up as Kulusevski went down, but play carried on. Spurs get counted on. Saka cuts inside Davis and finishes into the far corner. Now, VAR did check the Kulusevski incident, and they deemed it as though there was not enough contact for a penalty. The contact was minimal, but substantial. He breaks his stride. He's able to stay on his feet. So again, it's really, you could argue 50-50 on this. Dawson said, for me, that's a penalty on Kulusevski. He tried to be honest and stay on his feet. And said after the game, from his perspective, look, it doesn't matter how I saw it. What matters is what I've said all along. Referees are now no longer refereeing the games in a stadium anymore. They're refereed somewhere else, and they will convince me otherwise. It's not even re-refereed. It's refereed somewhere else. That's why I don't celebrate goals anymore. I wait for somebody down the road. I just don't think the referees in the stadium anymore have the authority they used to make decisions, and then you go with it. I'll just wait and see what the bloke down the road thinks. It's a shame. I don't like it, but it's here to stay, and I've got to accept it like everybody else. And you know what? We'll come on to that in a second, but I think the concern was the way, if I can bring Russ in, that the way Spurs lost their shape for that second goal. Yes, it was a moment of real frustration by the element of the way Arsenal broken us, but to not have the general focus, which Ange touched upon, play the game, not the moment, not that aspect, to carry on playing, which Spurs didn't arguably do. You could say as a trait of a young side with a lack of experience. No one tracked Saka. No one did. What was more frustrating, Russ? The fact we didn't get the decision or the fact we didn't track the runner for the second goal?
Well, second one. Really, I mean, I didn't think either of those were penalties, if I'm honest, but it's only my opinion. But there was a crossfield ball. It was on. We all saw it, and bingo, there it was. Ben Davis, all he can do is backtrack. Saka does what he does. Vicario comes out a little bit. There's a gap. Bosh, goal. I mean, it's what top players do. I mean, I do think that there isn't. We wouldn't have lost the ball in that area in the first 10 or 11 games of the season when everybody was playing well. But, I think it has to be said that Maddison and even Sonny, that, I know he got a terrific penalty today, but, recently he's been way off his game. And James Maddison, we're very excited when James came into the club. He wanted to be at Spurs. He wants to be at Spurs. We want him to be a success. But there weren't other clubs, big clubs, queuing up for him. And, this is worrying. His form is absolutely pivotal to this football team. So I think it's a case, that it isn't working in midfield. And once it breaks down there, even when we're attacking, it's vulnerable time. And Ange, I think, probably knows his best midfield in his mind. The trouble is they're all not playing very well, most of them, and it is a big issue. And it's not just an issue for the Newcastle game or the game today. It's been an issue for quite a few games now, since almost the turn of the year, in my opinion. But so yes, no penalties for me. should somebody have helped Ben Davies and tracked him? Well, Mickey van der Ven would have been that man, I suppose, but he was further up the pitch, wasn't he? But that's the way Ange wants to play football, so you can't have everything.
I mean, look, again, kind of you, Pat, another Spurs set piece with a goal conceded. Havertz sleeping high, too much room to head home from a corner, 3-0 to Arsenal. And, really at that point, Pat, hadn't really been that kind of half. I mean, Spurs really controlled a lot of the possession. But again, we go back to the set pieces. I know we've gone into it already on this show, but, we had 15 days, Pat, 15 days to sort set pieces, 2 weeks off. We can see 2 corners in 38 minutes. And you have to ask, again, why is no one picking up Ben White, who is blocking Vicario? And again, I will just say again, for those that are questioning it, you can see, and it's still here, there's Havertz with his hands placed, it looks like on Mickey van der Ven's back. Again, you could argue it's 6 and 1, half and dozen the other when you still it. But Pat, how concerning is it, Pat? And you said it earlier, you feel with every conceding of a corner, Spurs, Pat, are so susceptible to conceding the goal.
Yeah, it's really worrying because it's been like this for a long time. I don't recall the trigger point. I think it was maybe an Everton game. I'm not sure when it first happened, but ever since someone sussed us out and stuck somebody on the goalkeeper and saw what happened and how flustered Vicario was in that game, literally every team's done it. And this is what I mean by managers and teams and even players just being tactically astute and aware of what teams are weak at, what certain parts of their game, and changing it. Because when Arsenal or any other team play other teams, they don't do that to the goalkeeper because they know it's not going to work. So unless Vicario changes, or unless some of our defenders or attackers or anyone does something to stop it, this is going to continue, and we're going to see this pile on in every game because people know it works and we're a soft target in these situations. And yeah, I fear and dread every time the opposing team has a corner. And the irony is, when Saka hit that corner, I was thinking, oh, that's such a shit corner. This is for the first goal, by the way, because it didn't even look like it hit the first man or beat the first man. And then 2 seconds later, I see them running away, and I'm like, what's happened? And obviously it was an own goal, but I don't know what happened in the build-up, or not in the build-up, but in that moment, Højbjerg got his head to it and somehow it ended up in the back of the goal. But we are such a soft and easy target on corners, and the zonal marking isn't working. I mean, we were saying this 2, 3, 4 months ago, and unfortunately we're almost in May now and we're still saying the same thing. And it's frustrating because we've conceded so many goals, which ironically, if we would have changed that, we probably wouldn't have conceded. And of course we may have conceded another way, but stop the problem and then address other things. And yeah, it's frustrating.
Can I say one thing to you? One thing to you. On the back of the goal against Man City, where he conceded in the final minute, Vicario's blocked off, I think the following game, it might have been, or the following second game, was Brentford, where we had Maddison actually as acting as a bit of a blocker, if you remember.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
That now seems to have completely gone away. Almost like we've forgotten that we've got this issue that is rising its head, certainly in the last 2 or 3 months. Why is no one, Pat, looking at this thinking, we need a solution to this? Why is no one looking at it thinking we need a solution? That's what I'm absolutely stunned about. It's the Premier League. It's got some of the best coaches, the best players, and we're just not solving the issue. We're almost turning a blind eye to it, it feels. 15 days to work on it.
It's very strange because even you don't have to be coached in certain things. Just adapt to what's going on in the game. Like you can't coach every single situation. Things are going to happen in the game and people adapt to what's going on. Like, I mean, Romero one-on-one with the goalkeeper. Is he really going to be doing drills where he's one-on-one with keepers and finishing 9 times out of 10? Probably not, because that's not his position. But in the game it happened and he adapted and slotted away his chance. In the game, if you see people piling on your goalkeeper, then adapt and do something. You notice as well, when they take a corner, Arsenal were a lot of the times they're behind the ball, behind the goal, and then as the ball's about to swing in, and they all basically make a move and they confuse our players. And like you said, because we're doing zonal marking, we're marking zones and columns instead of people, we're just all over the place, and it's very easy. I think, who did we play the other day? Where we drew the game, and they literally had so many headers on target or literally on goal. We were just lucky that they didn't have better finishing, otherwise it could have been even more. It was Newcastle, sorry. Even though they scored 4, they could have scored a couple more if their headers were on target. And in the end, Shaw, for the 4th goal, did convert one of them, but they had so many chances. It could have been 6 or 7s because of obviously the way we defend. And I don't know. I mean, we do know what needs to be done. I just don't understand why they're not doing it. So Yeah, it's a tough one. We've got obviously Liverpool, who've got monsters, Van Dijk, Kanate, Kwanzaa. They've got loads of beasts, Nunes. All these guys are like 6'3" and over. So we're going to be in big trouble if we don't actually change up. And then obviously Man City, Haaland, Nathan Ake, who's already scored one on us. Gvardiol scored a header today. They've got a lot of beasts as well. So unless we change something, it's just an easy way to score against us. So, you can't keep making a mountain in every game, 2 goals down, 3 goals down.
Against anyone, Pat, at this level,
it's
you
insane.
Can't. Yeah, you
And
can't. You can't. Yep.
I looked at something. Everton, who are defensively nowhere near as good as us in terms of player for player, midfield, attack. But if you look at how solid they've been defensively in the last couple of games,
Patty,
keeping
that's a team
clean
fighting
sheets.
relegation. That's a team that's only just confirmed their Premier League status going into the final 4 fixtures of the season. That is my worry. That is my biggest concern.
And if you look at it, I mean, I just pull up the Everton in the last couple of games. They've kept they kept a clean sheet against Brentford yesterday, beat them 1-0. Kept a clean sheet midweek against Liverpool, beat them 2-0. And they kept a clean sheet against essentially a relegation candidate / 6-pointer, Nottingham Forest 2-0. What are these guys doing in training that we're not doing? How come Everton can keep clean sheets and we can't? Like, what's going on, man? Like, coaching is shambolic at the moment. 2 weeks on the training field and we're still conceding in the same manner. So what did we work on?
I think when you look at it, coming over to you, TJ, and look, again, we're on this subject, so again, it's not going to be the most positive aspect of it. I think it's 1 clean sheet in the last 24. For any club that has got genuine ambitions of being in any type of European football, whether that's Champions League, whether that's Europa League, forget about the conference for a second. I won't bring crackers in with Dynamo Donuts and Dynamo Cheeky Girls. I won't bring him into it. But the element of it is we've got to be better than this. And after the game, Anne said, look, it's about now getting over the course of time from where we are to where we want to get to. To do that, we need to be absolutely laser focused on the details, the small things that get you from where we are to become a team that contends. And there are thousands of things that we need to improve. I'm not going to sit here and explain them all. But it's the little details like you can't give a team time and space, the opposition. You can't make decisions or lose focus in any given moment. Even the transition goal, we're focused on a decision at the other end when we should have been thinking about the danger that was potentially at the other side. I get that, Ange. But the thing is, again, I'm sorry to Ali, bless him, Ali Gold. We love you, Al. And I'm sorry to keep bringing you into this, Al, because Al asked the question. Al asked him, are you concerned, TJ, with a trend of the nature of the goals we're conceding? And in part, look, he's mentioned in there that it is a concern. But the one thing I want to hear from my manager, when you've conceded 16 goals from set pieces, the most in the Premier League, I want him to come out and say, we're aware of it and we're working on it. That's what I want to hear. And that's my concern, that was not the first word to leave his mouth.
Yeah, no, I concur, man. I mean, listen, I've been on the show before and also said that I always take what any manager says with, several sprinkles of salt. However, it is a political position, when you are the manager, because you are the central mouthpiece for the club. You are the person that people are going to look for guidance. You're going to be the person that people are going to look at when you win, to inspire us, to push us on to the next win. And when you lose, to reassure us and let us know that we hear you and we're working on it. Because Russ mentioned earlier that Ange Postecoglou is an employee of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. Well, not to be too esoteric or philosophical about it, but they actually all work for us. We are their bosses. They are our employees. The entire club, Daniel Levy and all the rest of them, work for us, because it is our hard-earned pounds, pence, dollars, cents, wherever you're coming from in the world, to support the club. Whenever you buy anything that's related to Tottenham Hotspur, you are supporting the club. So they have a responsibility to show us the respect. And also, even if you don't believe it, have the sense to pay us a little lip service. Just like you said, Rick, just say, we are aware that we are vulnerable from set pieces, and believe me, we're working on it, and then move on to the next question. I do think as well, it's important just to reiterate a couple of the positives for today. I also thought that Decky was outstanding today. And just to talk about Everton and why they've just overturned Liverpool without conceding a goal and overturned Brentford without conceding a goal, when they have a far, quote unquote, poorer side in both senses of the word than we do. And in all honesty, it was fire and passion like that. that Liverpool game, that
Spot on.
Merseyside derby,
Spot on.
from the first whistle to the
Yep.
last, Liverpool
Yep.
didn't get a look in. Like, they really were up for the fight. It was really inspiring. I have to say, I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Everton. I always have. I don't know why particularly. I mean, I do have a number of friends who are Everton supporters, but I just think I admire their doggedness and this kind of resolute attitude. And so this season isn't done for us, lads. And I think that how we can turn it around, we're talking about plugging gaps. You know what I mean? I think the one thing that every single player, to a man, whether you're on the bench, whether you're on the field, whether you're in the training ground, coaches, all of them, is just, for want of a better phrase, man up. Like, really go out there and say, we will give them nothing. And I hate to quote two Arsenal guys, but I remember I see Lee Dixon a fair amount where I live, right here in Los Angeles. And I remember talking to him once, and he knows I'm Tottenham. We've had a few conversations, and he would say that him and Tony Adams would go around the dressing room before every game and say, give them nothing. And there is so much to be said for that attitude. Just stand up, take responsibility. If you lose, you lose, but you go down swinging. And that's something that all of us can respect. And it does bear results. So if we are talking about Everton and how they're keeping clean sheets, that's something that we could adopt immediately. Stand up and take responsibility. Ricario, if there's a player standing on you, why do you need Maddison or Romero or somebody to come and push them away? Push them away yourself. You're a full-grown man. Take responsibility to a man, and let's see what we can grind out until the end of the season, and then just see where the chips lie after 38 games.
Yeah. You know, the crazy thing about this game is that we actually started, I think, quite well. We won a lot of the 50-50s early on, and that gave me a lot of genuine confidence that we actually are here today. We're turned up, we're fighting, we're passionate, fans are with the team. But, you know, again, when you look at the nature of the goals we concede, it's really, really hard to try and stick with that reoccurring theme. I mean, we lost Werner after 31 minutes. He came off with like a muscle injury. Ange didn't go into a great deal after the game. Let's be honest about it. Werner didn't really do much of note, really, before he had Johnson come on in his place. Sonny got in behind, but wanted it into the sky instead of hitting the target. And for only the second time ever in Lawful Derby history, Arsenal win at half-time, 3-0. And I think you said it earlier, Pat, you know, you look at the game itself, you had 2 corners and a brilliant counter-attack, one which was a tight offside, you had a pre-VAR decision at 1-1, but ultimately they exploited 2 of Spurs' biggest weaknesses, and as we said, defending and stopping transitions. But it honestly did not have felt like a 3-goal margin between the 2 teams. And at half-time, we saw Sarr come on for Bentancur. Gotta be honest and say, I didn't really understand that. I mean, to some degree, I mean, you could argue maybe why didn't Højbjerg come off? Wasn't really for me doing enough in the game. Romero sending a header over the crossbar in terms of that kind of start of that second half. His third-headed chance of the game. Richie and Basuma replacing Maddison and Højbjerg. And what I will say, look, Richie gets a lot of stick from Spurs fans. You know what? When he came on, for me, he absolutely rattled some of them Arsenal players. And I think we really, really, missed a player like Richie starting the game. I know, Russ, you can easily say these things in hindsight, but I just wonder, Russ, you know, players like Richarlison, he absolutely lives off a scrap. We saw it in the second half with that incident late on. And I just wonder with someone like Richarlison whether this might have been a better game for him to start.
I think there's a really good case for that. I mean, he was a menace, wasn't he, when he came on? And they didn't like having to play against him. And that goes back to what we were talking about at the very, very beginning of the show, you know, the starting lineup, the mental attitude, the personnel you're going to pick. And the reality is we do not have a centre forward, as we all know. But Richie is about the closest we have got to a centre forward. And, OK, he might not have been fully fit. Well, you know, I think it was Merson who actually said, wasn't it? If you're not fit, you shouldn't be on the bench. So, you know, if he's right on that, then Richie could have played, but, you know, Ange chose not to do it. It was Sonny down the middle. And I think compared to the old days, he gets lost now down the middle. So I was surprised it didn't happen at half-time, personally.
Look, Spurs did find their way back into the game. Romero, to be fair, look, he'd been pressed like an absolute Russ used the word menace, but an absolute madman in that second half. And he got his ball playing pretty much as a centre back to some degree. Raya fluffed the kick right at him. He finished well into the bottom left-hand corner. Patty, 3-1, that goal going in. Was there an element of any kind of hope, or was it just trying to really get some pride back into what was a damaging first half, as we all know?
No, definitely. When Richarlison, when Romero scored, we were hopeful in the stadium because it was a bit subdued. You know, we went in 3-0 down at half time, and we were the better team in most parts, other than obviously them scoring the goal. It kind of like the game was lulling out. It was just petering out because Arsenal were 3-0 up. They didn't have to do anything, and we had the ball, but we weren't really causing them problems. We weren't testing the goalkeeper. We weren't getting them behind. We weren't forcing them to scramble or putting them under pressure, basically. But when Romero scored, we all felt like, you know what, maybe we can do something, because we weren't playing badly, were we? It's just for whatever reason. Well, we know the reasons. We were 3-0 down, and it just felt like, wow. So obviously you feel still got 2 goals to score, but we all felt positive, and we all felt like, you know, if we get the next goal and we get it soon enough, we can really, Arsenal will wobble and they feel under pressure, and then anything can happen in a North London derby. So we all felt good. Romero obviously leading. I liked what Romero did today because he led by his actions, not talking, not shouting at people. He just led by his actions on the pitch, and I thought he had a fantastic game. Like Russ said, I thought Kulusevski had a fantastic game as well. Son, unfortunately, wasn't really in the game. I mean, it was a great penalty, like Nurse's steal as well, because it took ages to actually take the penalty, and the way he slotted it away or finished in the top corner was great. But Son didn't have a great game. But when he did play on the left and we put Richarlison down the middle, it did feel like we could get something out of the game. Unfortunately, you know, we ran out of time. But yeah, when we scored that goal, I did feel optimistic, and I did feel like maybe we can get something out of the game. You always got to believe, don't you? Yeah, it's tough because 3-0 down, 3-1 down, you're still really giving yourself a mountain to climb when you know Arsenal are defensively a really good team. I think, if I'm not mistaken, they probably conceded the least amount of goals in the Premier League. So you always know it's going to be hard to at least get 2 more in the same game. It's crazy because you score 2 goals against Arsenal, you expect to at least get something out of it because they don't really concede. Yep. But obviously, when you keep conceding 3s and 4s, you're always going to have a problem. So that's kind of where the
decision at 1-1 against Van de Beek. It's so infuriating.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it changes the game.
Again, like just the rules of the game. Just apply the rules of the game. You had 2 Arsenal players making a positive action towards the ball. It's not like it ricocheted off the back of their leg or off the back of their shoulder or something, like they were unaware. Then there is an argument to be made. Well, they didn't make a positive action towards the ball. Tomiyasu's tried to clear the ball, and it's bounced off Gabriel's head and ended up at Van de Ven's feet. Whether he's offside or not, it doesn't matter. And that 1-1, 5 minutes after they scored, would have been huge for us.
Yeah,
that's what I really feel robbed, Pat.
I know, same. I personally think it was a penalty on Kulusevski. I feel that him being honest and trying to stay up, because obviously he wanted to try and run through on goal and convert the chance, but it's a penalty, man. He absolutely took him out. And if Kulusevski goes down, they have to give it. So now you're actually penalized for being honest. So, you know, then when you see people rolling on the floor and acting like they got shot, and everyone's like, why are you doing that? Because if you're honest, you don't get the decisions. So, yeah, I feel really aggrieved by this. I like I said, it's a really weird one because a part of me, of course, I'm angry and frustrated. But then I don't feel that we deserve to lose today. But then I do feel we deserve to lose because we keep making the same mistakes. So I'm really torn. I'm really torn with today's performance and result.
I mean, the hard thing is I do feel, look, and I'm going to be honest with it and say it as it is. I don't want to, regret by not saying the things I want to say, that I feel that the 2 goals that Spurs get really does cover up a lot of the bad things at the moment with Tottenham that are deeply, deeply concerning me. And for those that, again, I've watched LastWordOnSpurs for the last 7 or 8 years, believe me, I'm a really, really positive fan. I am one that tries to see the direction and the good in a lot what Spurs are doing. And part of the reason why, again, this wonderful show was created is because, again, I just can't vent by myself, and want amazing people that come on here and can vent with us and could give us some therapy and fair balance, because I think it's shows like in games like today why you need shows like this, because it can be very easily tamed that Spurs have almost nearly taken a draw from the jaws of, a gallant defeat. But ultimately, when you look at the way Spurs are defending, there are concerns. And again, for the most positive fan out there, I'd like to think that they can see that common sense as well. We know, again, I'll say it, we're in the first season under a manager. We know he hasn't got all of his own players. We know he's only had 2 transfer windows. Again, we take the fact is that ultimately there's been players out. He's without Destiny Udogie. But ultimately, you've got to defend better. Look, Spurs did get another goal back. Quite honestly, look, I think TJ said at the start, we're not ones on here to go at referees. We don't like doing that on here. But Michael Oliver's performance today, I mean, that is meant to be the top referee in the Premier League. That's the standard. And that's what concerns me. If Michael Oliver is the standard of refereeing that we set ourselves on, then how he doesn't see Declan Rice kick Ben Davis in between the legs, quite frankly, up in the air, and look past it, and it having to go to VAR to be referred, absolutely stuns me. It genuinely stuns me. Spurs did get a penalty. Sonny firing home for 3-2. And Arteta said after the game, look, after considering that one, which wasn't very usual for us, I did want to pray. I did start to pray. Because there was that feeling around Arsenal where it was starting to get jittery at 3-2. And obviously, we had that moment straight afterwards where Mickey van der Ven headed the ball off the line as it was fired in from a corner. Lascelles replacing Davis in the final few minutes. But just to come back onto that incident if I can, let's go to TJ. TJ, how concerning is that a referee that is literally looking directly at this, he couldn't have a better view of this incident, doesn't give the penalty?
I think it's indicative of all refereeing now in the Premier League. I mean, there's been obviously a lot of debate about it. Some of it absolutely laughable. I think some of it downright irresponsible with regards to the comments made by Nottingham Forest. The problem is that they know that they don't have the final word. They're just like, you know what, I'll let it go. And if I missed it, then VAR will catch it. And this is part of the problem of implementing such a seismic new system into a game that's been around and been played in a certain way for such a long time. I just think that referees are so terrified. It's like, modern society that we live in. So many of us are so terrified to say what we really think, are so terrified to air an opinion, are so terrified to kind of do something or not do something. Like, the amount of times I've said to friends of mine who are still single, I feel so sorry for you because God knows what you could say to somebody that you're possibly interested in. They'll be offended if you say something and offended if you don't say something. So there's lots of reasons why I'm thankful for my lovely wife, but I'm just so glad that I don't have to kind of get involved in all that kind of thing anymore.
Amen.
Yes, brother. And
Spurs is bad. Can I say Spurs is bad enough? By
the way, VAR in Sweden has been binned. They got rid of it. VAR.
Yes,
they don't want it anymore.
I don't know how you do it, but and so the fact for me is that there's just kind of that safety net is just now it's too all-encompassing. I know that we're going to get semi-automated offside as well next year, but we have to look at this idea of what's clear and obvious. Like, either he makes the decision and you overrule it, or just let him make the decision, or you make all the decisions. Like, we need to kind of come to some sort of consensus here, where if a referee sees something or doesn't see something, because Rick, the answer to your question is, brother, of course he saw it. He nearly lost a size 13 up Ben Davis's arse. He saw it, but he's like, I wonder if, because of course he's standing behind Ben Davis. So he's here, Ben Davis, for all the people are listening, they can't see my hands. By the way, I gesticulate a lot. What can you do? He's standing behind Ben Davis. And of course, Declan Rice is standing behind him. So maybe Michael Oliver's thinking, well, perhaps behind Ben Davis, there was a touch on the ball that I didn't see. So I won't call it. Because, of course, the ball did ricochet away before he kicks Ben Davis. But, brother, it's not just about that decision. This is a VAR fiasco, that the power and the authority has been taken away from referees. And, of course, right after the Liverpool game, when they released the conversations between people having VAR conversations, Pandora's box really was opened.
Russ, you made an interesting point there that in Sweden, VAR's been ditched. I mean, we know next season we're going to get
Yes.
semi-automated offsides. I mean,
Yes.
there's nobody going to give up on this, though, is there? They're going to run with it now because they've
Oh,
introduced it.
You wait till the Euros. There'll be some fun in the Euros.
I mean, listen. For me, I think that's a break for me around Spurs. I couldn't care less about the Euros or something. Yeah,
Rick, I don't know what our viewers and listeners think. It does seem, on the whole, in European football, particularly Champions League, UEFA, Europa League, that VAR is a lot quicker than it is in the Premier League. It almost seems that VAR actually is how it's supposed to be, because TJ's absolutely right. I mean, the amount of time they take, to decide these decisions.
It's a case of too many cooks as well, Russ.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's too many cooks and no one has that final decision. You've got 4 or 5 guys who are all terrified, thinking, if they release this footage and I say something and people don't agree, it's honestly the lunatics running the asylum at this point.
Yeah. No, I don't want to distract away from it. We've had bad decisions, as we know. We've had poor performances. We've had, again, poor decision making in terms of the defending. But just to give a bit of an overview in terms of some of those players out there in relation to that game. Look, it's the most bizarrest thing to say, but you could argue possibly Spurs' best 2 players on the pitch were the centre backs. We've conceded 3 and 2 from set pieces. I mean, it's just absolutely nuts when you try and put that into context. Kulu as well. Look, Decky as well. And let's say congratulations to Decky. He's been a father this week. I think, again, all I could say to him is good luck getting some sleep, bud. Like I say, having 2 under 3, we got a battles. It's all for those wonderful women in our lives, I must say. Keep them close to you. Sometimes not too much when Spurs are playing Arsenal, but keep them as close as you can to you, I will just say. Look, Maddison, I think it's hard. We could take player to town on this show, but I think when a game like that happens now, Maddison isn't up to where he needs to be, where he wants to be, I'm sure. It was an underwhelming game from him. Didn't really make an impact. And by the fact he came off, tells you everything you need to know. Timo Werner, 31 minutes on the pitch. Again, that will go on about that decision, whether he should be a Spurs player. I think given the nature of the way this show is going, that's a debate definitely to be had maybe later on in the season. But next up for Spurs is the return, another reunion of Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. In terms of where this leaves us now on the table, which I think is really important to bring into context now on the back of the weekend. Spurs finished the weekend remaining in 5th. They're now 7 points behind Aston Villa. Obviously now with the goal difference at plus 15, Villa's at plus 21. 7 points of difference, with Villa having a more positive goal difference with 3 games left to play. It's looking increasingly likely that Spurs are going to be playing in the Europa League next season and not the Champions League. And I think it's really important, guys, we finish on this note, that the season doesn't just kind of filter out, peter out into a real negative drab. Look, they go to Stamford Bridge next. It's a ground that I don't need to remind you all, Spurs have got an absolutely horrendous record at, and are playing Maurizio Pochettino's Chelsea, where you could arguably say, look, that's where this form of Spurs, to some degree, this inconsistent nature started. So we'll start, if we can, with you, Patty. What do you need to see from Tottenham against Chelsea to give you the hope and belief that this season isn't finished yet and we can still end on a high, despite, can I just say, how damaging the result will be from this game against Arsenal? Because I know for many out there, similar to me, the Arsenal games are absolutely everything. It's on course for them with, again, cup games and just the nature of them. What do you want to see, Pat, for Chelsea to come on, like I say, later next week?
To be fair, I thought I don't know, maybe I'm of a small minority. I thought we played well today. I really did.
Oh, we did. Listen, we did, Pat. We did.
Yeah, no, but I see in the comments.
It's crazy saying we played well. But
people in the comments are like, really not agreeing with what I'm saying. I thought we played well. So to be fair, I just need to see basically us being more solid defensively on set pieces, because we didn't get taken to town. It's not like Arsenal had shot after shot and Vicario was under duress and had to pull off some world-class saves. It's not like our defenders were scrambling, making last-ditch tackles or getting blocks off on players that looked like they were about to score. I didn't see none of that. Arsenal didn't really create any real goal, threatening chances, but we conceded 3, which is insane. So to be fair, the same intent, but just better, just basically. I think for me, I think the thing I need to see, if we're, if I need to put my finger on it, is for us to be a bit more streetwise. We're just not really where we need to be. We don't seem to be intelligent enough to navigate a game. Like, you'll see Arsenal players, okay, cool, we'll sit back and then we'll hit you on the counter, or we'll, crowd out your goalkeeper, or we'll do something to David Raya, wasting 10 minutes of the game, just falling over every time he catches the ball and, wasting time. And we just don't seem to have that dirty streak in our locker at the moment. I need to see us just be a bit more cuter, a bit more smarter, and then probably just continue what we're doing. And also probably as well, I've noticed it takes us so long now to get a shot off. We're taking ages. Like, Sonny had a few chances where we could have, the old Son will hit it left foot, right foot and try and get a shot off. And it's like now we're almost trying to score the perfect goal and walk the ball into the net.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah, TJ, it was
you tell me
crazy.
the last time we had a shot from outside the box, Pat?
I know.
Why won't people shoot from 20 yards? If we're the kind of team, and we've proved that we are under Ange, we're always going to have more possession, right? Always. Yeah. What do we have today? 67%, right?
Literally,
against, arguably, to right. Thank you, Rick. So 62% overall against the team that's, to Russ's analogy, a cigarette paper away from being Manchester City. So a very, very good side. And yet we never seem to shoot. And also we just don't cross enough. I just think we need to be a bit more positive, and because we do have Van der Ven behind. So if that shot gets blocked or whatever, well, he'll go and get it. Like, you can put anyone in behind and he's going to catch them. Again, Pat, to your point, Martinelli is rapid, and VDV, 80
I know, literally, he
was tucking his napkin in every time he got the ball. He's like, watch this, with meatballs, whoosh, gone. Yeah, and so we've got to shoot more. And for me, again, that's something that we can practice in those 15 days. I know we've only got 4 days, but let's get stronger at defending set pieces, and let's practice shooting from outside the box and leave it there.
Yeah. So that would be, sorry, Vicky, so that would be for me. I just need to see us be a bit more tactically astute, bit more streetwise, and get some shots off. Like, there was a time when we were taking the most shots in the league. Maddison was shooting, Son was shooting, Porro was shooting. I'm not seeing any of that anymore, and we're almost trying to score the perfect goal. And again, we're not testing the goalkeeper. So that's what I'd like to see in the next game.
Pat, thank you, mate. Sorry for calling you up.
I know, just to put things into context for the viewers and listeners, I wasn't meant to be on today.
Just say, when you next see Heartman, say Heartman, you owe me. You need to have a word with Heartman. Bless his heart.
Be honest with that. You feel better, right? You feel better? A little bit? A little bit?
No, don't.
A little
bit. Top man. Pat, we'll see you, mate, for the preview against Chelsea. It doesn't get any easier for the poor bloke, I tell you. Just doesn't get any easier, does it, for it? We're going to go to TJ. We're going to go to Russ. I'm going to finish with TJ. Russ. Oh, we've waited.
And what can I say after those two, talking about the Chelsea game? I'll give you what I think, or what I want. Economy of words. Please. Clean sheet, 3 points.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? We've waited a while for that.
Be lovely, genuinely,
look, Russ, we've had a lot of discussion, around this show about the manager, about the tactical inflexibility, about the nature of conceding goals. Would this work, Russ? Again, we want to be honest and fair balance. Can it work with some transfer windows, with the man getting his own players? Do you reckon this is going to work?
Well, I think we're about to find out after this transfer window. I mean, I think it's a free season for Ange. And let's be honest, we were all thinking...
He won't get too many of them, will he? He won't get too many of them.
Well, no, this is it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Won't get many like this.
This is it now. It ratchets up from next season, because he said himself, I want Tottenham to be in a title race. My goodness me, that checkbook's going to have to be big and fat, and there's going to have to be some ruthless decisions made, the way I see it. But look, at the start of the season, Harry's gone, he's come in. Nobody really knew what was going to happen. We knew that the squad was quite heavy with players who served their time and probably should have moved on. Most of them are there. We brought in a couple of players. Most of us were talking about 10th, 9th, 8th would be okay. We're currently 5th.
Yeah.
We could end up 6th. If a miracle happens, we could end up 4th, which would be amazing. But I think I'm with everybody else pretty much. I think we all agree it's disturbing form of players, the way that we're playing games. So obviously against teams like Arsenal, for example, who've got a lot about them, and we just don't seem to have the plan. And so, we go on about plan B and plan C in the summer. He really has got to try and reinvent the Tottenham wheel a little bit to make an improvement. And the pressure will be on. So we wish him well. Because we can't keep, kicking managers out.
It's mad, isn't it? I think we've not had a situation where managers lasted longer than 18 months for the previous 4 or 5 years. And it's not here to be a witch hunt to keep taking the manager out. But the reality is that, I would, if we were 6th or 7th or 8th or 9th for that matter, but I can see a direction of what we're doing and there's not reoccurring themes, I'm all for supporting that. I'll be sitting there saying, look, but I can see a plan. Forget the position. Look at what we're doing. Look at how we're playing. Look at how we're improving. And that is where it comes back to those
difficult
concerns.
To see, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really hard to see that.
At the moment. Big week for him, isn't it, though? If he goes to Chelsea and Liverpool and gets 6 points out of 6, which I know many will laugh at now.
Yeah.
Who knows? Russ, thank you as always.
If we 10 in 2 games, God forbid, well, but we won't, will we?
I hope not. Russ, thank you as always.
Thanks. It's been difficult because it's just a horrible game to lose. And
it's the worst game. It's the worst.
We didn't play the worst we've played, but we certainly were nowhere near our best and missed a few tricks.
Yeah, mate, I can't thank you enough. Russ Williams,
Pleasure.
The brilliant Russ Williams. I must just say, somebody loved that voice. It's like, as Cracker says, honey being poured down your throat. What better therapy can you get than that?
Well, exactly. And thank God, in a way, we didn't win, because if we did, Crackers was coming on naked.
Yeah, you can blame Russ for that. Russ set that up. So I blame Russ for the footballing gods not allowing that to happen. I think Crackers somewhere is tucked up, probably delighted that didn't happen. Before I say that, Crackers probably would have come on naked. I will just let you know. So he'd be more than happy to have come on naked at Spurs 1. He would not have allowed me to say that. We'll come to TJ to close. TJ, look, I think you've been the one here that you are very much kind of in that camp where the man needs those windows to be given the opportunity to ultimately get the players he wants in. It is the first season. It is a rebuild. Again, many say we haven't got the stomach for rebuilds as fans. What do you want to see, TJ, in this next week from Tottenham? Big week ahead. Chelsea, Liverpool, respectively.
We've had 18 managers in the last 23 years, Rick. So we do have to be pragmatic, and we do have to do. It's very difficult to do. We have to try to suspend our reactionary nature to a loss like this, and to conceding repetitive poor goals, and just give the man an opportunity, to bed in his philosophies. Thank you so much for all the lovely comments that we've had all day, by the way. And just, try to be pragmatic. And I know it's difficult for Spurs fans because we've, been thirsting after a trophy for so many years. But what I want to see against the Chelsea game is play how we did against them when we went down to 9. Play like that with 11. Before. You know what I mean? Play like that. Play like it's a derby. Play like it matters. And also turn up there knowing we're much better than this lot. Chelsea are rubbish. They are terrible. They're a terrible, terrible side. They've got Cole Palmer, who's just incandescent, wonderful, wonderful player. And a couple of other players, they've got Thiago, who was brilliant, but kind of looking every day for his years now. And the rest of Nicholas Jackson, my goodness, you might as well have Freddie Jackson up top. He's absolutely useless. So turn up there with a bit of swagger and a bit of arrogance and go, we are going to hand it to you in your own home in front of the guy that used to be in our house. So that's what I'd like to see. Go in there and just go in there and smash them up, go in there with a bit of intent. And then, like I said, at the end of the season, where the chips lie, the table doesn't tend to lie. If we finish in 5th, that's where we should have been. If we manage to get 4th, great. 6th, whatever it is. But let's be honest and say we have progressed from last season, and also be honest and say we've had 3 previous managers to Ange that really hurt the club very, very deeply. especially the Mourinho and Conte eras, that really hurt us very deeply in our core, in our foundations. So that is going to take a little bit of time to turn around. But keep the faith, keep it respectful, keep the love for each other. Don't try to fight too much with your fellow fans. We all want the same thing.
Yes,
and long may it continue. Love to you guys. An honor as always. Thank you.
Mate, love for the love. Honestly, I've got to say, I've been blessed to have a wonderful panel that have helped us through this last one on Spurs. I got to say, an incredible audience. There's been nearly 6,000 of you that have watched us live. Again, listen, guys, thank you so much for all your incredible support for the show. Genuinely, we do it for wonderful people like you. We wouldn't be here for wonderful people like you that tune in
Vicky,
and watch.
there's loads of Arsenal fans in the panel, by the way. I've seen so many that.
Yeah, so have I. Loads of them.
Yeah, there's
right,
loads.
Pat.
So
you're not saying they're making up the majority of this, are you?
You're going to have to get an Arsenal filter, Rick.
Yeah, they're
my
here
God.
to gloat and laugh. But
Who's modding this?
They're getting
North
fashion
London
tips
derby,
from us. So we're so handsome and stylish. They're getting fashion tips, man. Don't worry
I'll
about it.
tell you. Oh my God. Well, listen, whoever's watching out there listening, thank you so much for your interaction. Thank you for your lovely comments. Look, we hope we're going to bring you a positive, upbeat show of beating Arsenal. Wasn't meant to be. Look, let's just hope, as what Ange Postecoglou says, this is just part of our growth. This is just part of us learning to mature, learning to be better. But again, I want to say a massive thank you to our wonderful panelists here, the brilliant Russ Williams, broadcast extraordinaire. Russ, thank you so much again. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure, Rick. Thanks for having me on. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
watching. Thank you for listening. Come on, you Spurs.
Bless you. Chatty, Patty, who's probably out of chat now. Patty, thank you so much.
Yeah, always a pleasure. TJ and Russ, it's been brilliant. Everyone tuning in, I'm going to put something out on my channel tomorrow, basically just a breakdown of what happened today and my thoughts going into the game. So that's at Patrick Tyrant or Chatty Patty on YouTube. So follow, subscribe and all of that. And yeah, just keep the faith, man. Keep the faith. Yeah. It's a weird one because I want us to win every game bar the City one. And every Spurs fan that knows me will know why. So yes.
There'll be 60,000 in the Spurs stadium in City shirts. It's going to be mental. You won't know what side you're supporting. You really, really won't. TJ, thank you, mate. Thank you for keeping it real. Thank you for trying to keep us balanced. I appreciate it, my man.
Mate, of course, always a pleasure to be on the show. And I will echo the sentiments of dear Patrick when I say not only is it an honor to be on the show with such wonderful panelists, but also I would be happy to go and lay down a carpet leading straight to our goal when City come. I'll stand behind the goal with those semaphore things like at the airport, just pointing them to Haaland, like just in here. Keep Vicario distracted. I'll pull his elbow, make sure that City keeps scoring as many as they possibly can. Listen, a tough result, but nice to come on here and have a few laughs and, gain some needed therapy.
What it's all
if
about.
you are watching and listening to the show, please like and do all that kind of thing. It makes a huge difference to Rick and the guys that run the show. So please show love and support for the show by liking it and subscribing and doing all that kind of thing. It makes a big difference to Sir Rick, who leads us with such gallantry and such style. Thank you, Rick.
Well, listen, guys, thank you so much. And look, we're going to leave you with the therapy there. Hopefully there'll be no need for therapy come later in the week. It will be positive PMA coming your way from Russ, from Patrick, from TJ, from myself. Guys, we've been the last one on Spurs. Thanks so much for all your support. Keep safe, keep well. And as always, come on, you Spurs.